It began as a television program aimed at sharing the value of knowing cardiopulmonary resuscitation or CPR. But Project Restart has inspired thousands, turning out en masse today at one of the 50 training venues across the state. In the Hunter, ambulance stations reported an onslaught of willing participants from Doyleson in the south, west to Murrurundi and north to Nelson Bay. Even the youngest of students capable of learning life-saving skills. Hamilton headquarters was inundated with calls from those not wanting to miss out on the valuable training.
I think as you get older, you realise that it's something that should be done, that everybody should know about, because you'll never know when you're going to need it.
On the state's far north coast, hundreds of people of all ages flocked to 11 ambulance stations where officers gave up their time off to teach the basics of CPR.
5 of those. You've got to be able to see the chest rising and falling.
Officers at Lismore are already hailing Project Restart a success, saying there's been an overwhelming response in the days since the program was screened.
In Tamworth, Project Restart had a better response than a similar operation 15 years ago.
We tried Operation Friend in 1978, but it was nowhere near as successful as today's efforts.
Hundreds turned out today, all with good reason.
Mainly because we live out of town and it would take probably 20 minutes for an ambulance to get to us, so it's good to know this.
Hundreds turned out in Coffs Harbour today to learn the basic skills of CPR. Dorothea and Ian Dixon were among the many who are keen to avert any future tragedy.
4 or 5 heart attacks, but the first one was very close and makes you very nervous. You watch them all the time.
In all areas, ambulance services will monitor the results of Project Restart. Taree, Port Macquarie and Foster-Tuncurry reported a huge response. Hundreds of helpers from many service organisations volunteering their time to make the day a success.
3, 4, 5.
Although exact figures tallied, it's estimated Northern New South Wales now boasts 8,000 restarters. The project team overwhelmed by the response.
It's just tremendous, and it's great to feel that the NBN's out there doing something for the community.
We need now these communities that are all behind CPR to get behind their ambulance station and behind Project Restart.
I think this is going to be a community project that's going to see a lot of lives saved and a lot of happiness instead of the tragedy that seems to follow a heart attack.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
In a breakaway from traditional competitions that normally force competitors to stay at the beach all day, only the winner of each heat moves through to the semi-finals planned for February. But second place isn't forgotten, they win their entry fee back. The surf was small and unimpressive, forcing guys to try something a little out of the ordinary to attract the judges' attention. Sometimes it worked, other times it fell flat. In one heat, Stockton's Damien Iredale and Nelson Bay's Chris Hassan tried a little too hard for the same wave and were called for a double interference, resulting in both being disqualified. Merryweather's Jamie Lambert found standing on the tail helped out. While Andy Brinkworth from Catherine Hill Bay relied on speed to get him through. Brooke Ewers from Bar Beach may have been the tallest surfer in the comp, but he kept low to the water and scored well. And speaking of scoring well, Nobby Surf Club today received $20,000 worth of equipment from sponsors Newcastle Banana Merchants. Besides a new rescue boat, the club was given plenty of gear for competition, a double surf ski and 12 nipper boards.
Coffs Harbour Racecourse, today's party is hosted every year by the city's Lions Club. It gives the many senior citizens an afternoon away from the nursing home and a chance to let their hair down and celebrate Christmas.
It's quite astounding and very rewarding for the Lions Club members every year, and we've been doing this for many years, to get the senior citizens along and see them smiling, singing, clapping their hands, because a lot of them probably don't have any families with whom to celebrate Christmas, and this is our opportunity to give them that great day.
And this party had everything: a great meal, fine music and good company. And a Christmas party wouldn't be complete without a certain person. And he arrived in fine form, taking time out to listen to a few special wishes.
The race started in controversial circumstances. The 1.5 kilometre swim had few markers and the leaders swam off course. By the time they got back on track, they'd swum an extra 500 metres and added important minutes. Abusing officials as they changed for the bike leg. Western Australia's Matt Braven put his head down and got on with the job, opening up a handy lead in the 40 kilometre ride. Braven broke well away from the pack and went it alone. Lurking behind, an international pack saved their energy and took advantage of each other's slipstream. By the time the run leg came around, Braven was still out in front, but the hard slog on the bike was starting to take its toll. Canada's Frank Clark saw a chance, took him on and passed the Australian in the last kilometre to the finish line.
He's a great athlete and I just had to, run my ring off to try and catch him.
Although Braven missed the winner's check, he was still happy because he now qualifies for the Tooheys Blues series and is in line for a spot in the Australian team. Jackie Hellam from Byron Bay was the first woman across the line and just 17 minutes behind the men. Guitarist Todd Bowden was the first local home. The next national team qualifier will be held in Adelaide next year.
It was back to business for the crew members of HMAS Newcastle who've been in the city since Wednesday. The frigate was commissioned on the weekend and is now officially part of the Royal Australian Navy. The welcome given by the city will be remembered by many of the 180 on board.
Everyone's come out in force, supported the ship, all the locals. That was tremendous.
It's been a great time. The local people have been sort of more than friendly.
Right on 10 o'clock, the line was cast off and the Newcastle, in company with her sister frigate HMAS Melbourne, powered through the heads. On board, both vessels were family and friends. The frigate will remain in Sydney until the end of January, when she commences exercises, gearing up as a fully operational warship. She will make other visits to Newcastle, but none quite like the last 5 days.
Summer's warmer weather marks a traditional boost in seafood sales, but this year customers are in for a shock. Today, king-size prawns averaged around $26 a kilo at the markets, forcing some retail prices to more than $30.
No rain at the right time of the year, so now we're left with buying prawns from out of the state.
Since early this year, most co-ops have been buying frozen stock from around Australia and overseas to meet demands. The dry spell has also reduced regular supplies of popular fish, some trawler operators turning to other hauls to keep cash flows moving. This year has been described as the toughest on record for the state's 2,200 fishermen. With the lack of supplies, the introduction of quotas and moves to deregulate the industry, many could be forced out of the market.
A lot are in pretty big trouble at the moment. They're flat out keeping their heads above water, and I don't know whether a lot will survive in the next 6 months.
One thing for certain is the price of a Christmas feast, courtesy of King Neptune.
High. Don't know how high yet, but they will be high. And if you want something, get in quick.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
This vote last night sealed the future of Green Point. 60 hectares will be set aside for housing and a retirement village. The rest, around 150 hectares, will be turned into a foreshore park. The deal will cost Council around $2.6 million. The state government will be asked to fund $1.5 million of that. The rest will be given to developer McCloy's Proprietary Limited in land. It's taken Council more than 5 years to reach a decision. One Mayor John Kilpatrick believes is significant in the city's history. The Greenpoint Action Committee has campaigned hard for the entire estate to be parkland and is disappointed with the result.
Council over a period of many years has neglected opportunities to buy Greenpoint quite cheaply, and the state government has refused to accept any responsibility for open space funding in the Hunter. So that's created the situation where now we've had to settle for the compromise that we shouldn't have had.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Two of the men who played an important role in Newcastle's submission could not contain their delight today. A few months ago, they could hardly raise a smile after Central Coast was accepted into the state competition, leaving Newcastle out in the cold. Continual protest forced New South Wales Rugby to review its decision.
I think that they realised after a little while that they were going down the wrong path.
Newcastle will now run on in 1995, leaving the Central Coast a few more years to think about it.
I think it's got to go back to that they took a conservative view.
Laurie, are you angry at the way it was handled?
It doesn't matter how good your submission is. All it comes down to is the number of votes around the table. And we didn't have the number of votes.
Newcastle will use its current rep jumpers and have already taken a worldwide patent out on the design. They may have decided on their jumpers already, but there's still nothing definite on the home ground. At the moment, they're looking at 9 different locations in Newcastle and Lake Macquarie. There's even the possibility they will buy a piece of land and develop their own rugby park. The association will be required to field 3 teams, first grade, reserves and under-20s, but they won't be rushing out to buy stars.
Rugby being an amateur game, we can't really go out and buy as such. We have a great city here, good university facilities, job prospects, and I'm sure a lot of country-based players would be happy to settle here in Newcastle and play their better standard of rugby rather than having to go to Sydney, which is what they've had to do in the past.
We had a team in the Sydney competition in 1896 a team from Newcastle used to travel by boat on a Friday night, play in the Sydney competition and return home by boat on a Saturday. So so it's only just a return to history.
The Hut Check Caravan has set up in Newcastle's Civic Park for the next 3 days, offering to check you over, give advice, diet tips and refer you to a local doctor if necessary.
You know, health funds aren't just about looking after people in hospital. What we're trying to do is prevent people from getting there.
And it's not only for MBF members, but being a non-believer does cost you a little bit more. First, the once-over of weight versus height versus waist to hips ratio, and a flexibility test.
If I do it again and actually get further, does that one count? All right, yeah. I'm loosening up a bit.
Put on the right gear and enter the essentials into the computer, and we're ready for the stress test. But life is not all beer and Skittles though, and after the necessary electrical connections are made,
The human hi-fi rack.
very soon the whole purpose of the exercise is revealed. Work as hard as you can on the exercise bike and have your blood pressure checked all the way. After 12 minutes of torture, all is obvious.
Are you fair average on your bike test? Only average.
Can we?
No. Can't cheat on that. Despite your fitness and your appearance, you only scored an average.
Oh, thanks very much, Dr. Sue. Oh, and by the way, the MBF Caravan will be in Singleton next week before heading up the coast in the new year. This was once an open sandy hill, but hard work and heaps of Sydney North Shore humus, containing no heavy metals and lots of calcium, have converted it into vineyards which have been producing for 10 years now. Today also celebrated the official opening by local councillor Joe Redman of the wine tasting and cellar sales room on Nelson Bay Road at Bob's Farm. Viticulturalist Kim Stevens swears by the sandy loam of the district as distinct from the much touted clay soils of Pecolbin.
Well, the soils are just deep beach sands with a layer of grey soil over the top, and things seem to grow mad in it. They just seem to like it. And it makes the lighter style wines, and which are, I think, are the in thing at the moment.
More than 50 tonnes of Chardonnay, Riesling, Semillon, Cabernet, Shiraz, Merlot and Pinot grapes will be crushed this year, making a range of varietals and blends, including, because of the low pH, a very smart Pinot Chardonnay champagne. The establishment is very much geared to the tourism industry. All wines are made from grapes grown on the 28-hectare property and can only be purchased from the one outlet.
Brilliant project. Great to see this time of year with this is one of the quarterly award winners.
Maintenance work on this power pole in Crebet Street, Mayfield on November 26 last year when the operation went horribly wrong. Two of Shortland Electricity's highly experienced linesmen, Graham Hards and Stephen Truebody, were trapped in their burning elevating work platform after hydraulic oil from a tool caught fire. Both men plummeted to the ground. Hards died at the scene from severe burns, while Truebody later died in hospital. A joint inquest into the deaths of the men began today in Newcastle Court. It It was moved to the Supreme Court complex because of the large legal representation from state government departments, Shortland Electricity and the families of the victims. An amateur video was presented to the court. This has assisted investigators to inquire into the tragedy. The inquest heard a number of statements taken by police. A student of San Clemente High School telling investigators she and a group of friends had walked under the cherry picker just prior to the incident and claims to have heard the men say something is wrong. A short time later, neighbouring residents and passing motorists heard several explosions. They reported seeing the cherry picker and the men engulfed by what they describe as a fireball. Peter Quinn, the Liveline foreman on the job, was granted an indemnity by the Work Cover Authority and Office of Energy over his involvement in the accident. He was questioned about Shortland's policies regarding the operation of cherry pickers close to power lines. Quinn told the court his inquiries were unable to establish a safe working limit for an air gap between power lines. It was up to the operator. The inquest is being closely watched by the widows of the men killed in the accident. Representatives of the state's electricity supply industry are also at the proceedings, pending any recommendations from the coroner that could have ramifications for them.
Shortly before 10:30 last night, this Nissan Patrol tabletop was attempting to travel over the Fitzroy Street level crossing, located about 400 metres south of the Narrabri railway station. The Explorer train had just left the station when it collided with the car, trapping the female driver and her male passenger, both from Narrabri and both aged 21. Clinton Dickinson suffered massive head injuries and died a short time after ambulance and rescue workers freed the pair from the mangled vehicle. The woman, also suffering head injuries, was taken to Tamworth Base Hospital in a critical condition. The Explorer was delayed for 3.5 hours as emergency workers removed the wreckage from the tracks. Early this morning, the Narrabri woman's condition deteriorated. She was transferred by the NRMA Care Flight helicopter to Sydney's Westmead Hospital for emergency surgery. Tonight she is listed as critical. Police have not yet released her name. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
After 6 months of landscape work by Skillshare trainees, the wetlands is no longer an ugly duckling. 800 native plants have been used to turn it from bleak farming terrain into green forest. The wetlands is home to hundreds of native birds, including the duck. And for the first time in years, black swans gave birth to cygnets this spring, which have now grown into adults. The wetlands will be used as an education centre to teach children about the environment.
This project's about two things. It's about taking a group of long-term unemployed young people and teaching them skills, and it's about producing something of value to the community.
Meanwhile, the main item at last night's general meeting was to elect the board, but before the votes were cast, another vote was taken on life membership for former marketing manager Lee Morn. Morn was instrumental in setting the club up.
I believe that the Lord Mayor should give Lee Morn the keys to the City of Newcastle. I think the smallest thing we can do is give him life membership. I commend the motion to you.
The motion was accepted. Morn, who was moved to the Gold Coast, joined Sam Stewart as the only two life members. Voting on the board went as predicted, with Kevin Lynch, Phil Crockett, Terry Lawler, Graham Simpson and John Duncan winning the 5 seats. The first woman to run, Denise Audette, missed out. Also at last night's meeting, the club reported an operating loss of nearly $250,000 for the last financial year. With accumulated debts and loan repayments, the Knights' overall debt is just under $2 million.
If the predicted southerly winds hold, it could be one of the fastest trips up the coast in the race's 13-year history. Last year the fleet was becalmed and took around 2 days to make a trip that has a race record of just 21 hours.
If we get the conditions that we're hoping for, the strong southerly, we believe that we'll be in Coffs Harbour before 1 p.m. on Tuesday, which should break the race record.
And in an effort to make the race record beatable, the organising committee has moved the race start forward 2 hours to try and make the best of early afternoon breezes. 63 will start near Lion Island tomorrow, from sleek 10-metre craft to 1 or 2 pocket maxis.
The patrons are back in the club, but most of the sodden carpet is gone and the ceiling is waterlogged after Sunday night's downpour.
Well, from everyone that's been here for many years, says it's the worst they've ever seen. They've never seen anything like it.
The hail fell with a vengeance on the club premises. Giant pieces of ice clogged gutters and water overflowed into the ceiling and onto the floor below. While the club is covered by insurance, the damage bill could top $60,000. Ironically, a $1 million refurbishment program was just finished, the club in near-perfect condition. While the carpets could take up to a month to replace, it will be business as usual.
Operation Safe Arrival, a concentrated effort by police to get motorists to their holiday destinations safely, has been running for 5 days. The tally board has one encouraging statistic: fatalities, nil. But in the Upper Hunter region alone, 20 motorists have been booked for drink driving and some 700 for speeding. Some of that speeding apparently the result of impatience after traffic delays.
We're finding that people are sort of speeding in those areas where they've been held up a short period before, and they tend to put the foot down to try and make up a bit of time.
A large number of drivers have been booked for speeding near the end of the Sydney-Newcastle freeway, on the freeway itself and where the road narrows and comes back to a 90 km/h speed limit. But it is not just speeding drivers that are a concern to police. Sergeant Smith says slower vehicles holding up traffic could improve safety by showing courtesy.
Take the time to have a look in the mirror and see if they are holding up the traffic. If they are, then show a little bit of courtesy to those other road users and let them pass.
The new section of the F3 freeway has produced some problems, as the RTA itself predicted, for the compromise that funnels traffic onto Lenigan's Drive. This afternoon, a camper van collided with the rear of a sedan at the point where the road narrows to a single lane. The sedan was sent spinning. The camper van rolled onto its side, injuring 2 of the 3 occupants. One elderly woman was stabilised by paramedics inside the van before she was removed. Both the injured suffered bruising and lacerations. Operation Safe Arrival will continue until after the coming long weekend, with police mounting a major breath-testing blitz over the new year. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
You've got to do it.
Yeah. Bloody hell.